Good evening. Today is the 18th day of March 2017, and we are going to take up another subject. The explorations will continue in October on my return. So tonight you were thinking of
Night,
night. Yes,
because we have been reading on the descent into night,
yes.
and I think it's good to say a little bit in advance what this night is, so that we know where we are going and why Ashwapati is exploring it to start with. There is a fundamental difference between the Indian conception, what is known as Vedanta, and the dualistic religious conception. So, in the Indian conception, in the original Vedanta, not later on Vedanta also took various forms and use. There is nowhere, no space, time, configuration, no world, no state of consciousness where the one reality is not present. It's omnipresent reality. Therefore, in the deepest sense, non-dualism means that even in the darkest darkness, there is the one who is hidden there. And if it be so, there is something he is doing there. Something is happening out there. And that's why one must plunge into the night to learn the total secret. Otherwise, something remains missing. Only half God's truth, as Shubinda puts it.
Yes.
So one has to see that other half of truth. Now here comes the caution that it doesn't mean one has to raise up the darkness in oneself. People started asking Shubinda this question. Shubinda says it is already there and you will have to confront it. You can't escape it. You can't avoid it. What you need to know is that when you confront it, how to go through it. So essentially, Ashwapati, of course, is a yogi who has already arrived at the frontiers of consciousness. He has the secret knowledge. He has discovered the one reality without a second, Ekamev Dvitiyam. And therefore, he can take the plunge into night, which is very different from most human beings, let me put it like that, to be fair, who are already in the night and laboring in the night. So the difference is when a conscious being takes a plunge and he is conscious of the light, he is conscious of the one and enters into the night. Whereas another who is in the night, eats night, sleeps night, and whose very stuff of being is still, composed of night, he has to emerge into the light. So this is the big difference.
He has to seek the light.
He has to seek the light. So this is the basic background. And we see night being referred to at various places in Savitri. After all, it's a journey from night to light, if you want to put it like that. And another thing that, usage of words, as Jagdish Bhai was mentioning, see, these words in Savitri, they are not words with dictionary meanings. And they are states of consciousness. You have done so much work on that, so you're aware. They are states of consciousness which are being described. So if you go into dictionary, typically night is, well, we all encounter night and day. Now this is a very obvious word, where night is not just that night, but a night when you can say absence of light, you can say it's a state when you fall back upon yourself, you can say it is a state of self-oblivion, you can say it is a state of sleep. So many things. The same night can be total unconsciousness, can be understood in various ways from a purely psychological state of consciousness. Then Shobinda has used the word N, capital and small n. So capital N, night, is of course the night that pulls back, that resists. And small n is also used, but in a different sense. For instance, there is a passage in Finding of the Soul, which starts with, at first she stepped into a night of God. So this night of God is a different night. It's a state when the divine takes away from us all that we hold on to, all our props, all that we cling to, our own mental analysis and its power, our pride of being someone or something, our, every part, we are almost like a helpless babe. And
I have just come across that again last night in the Om choir.
okay,
An absolute supernatural
Darkness.
darkness falls on man sometimes when he draws near to God.
yes,
An hour comes when fail all nature's means, forced out from the protecting ignorance and flung back on his naked primal need, he at length must cast from him his surface soul and be the ungarbed entity within.
beautiful. So that is and that's why when we look at it from a psychological or a spiritual occult standpoint, crisis serves this tremendous purpose of bringing out the best within us. What really is crisis? When all that we hold on to, which supports us normally in life from external, relations and friends and people whom we know, to our own inner resources, a time comes when they all are taken away. I mean, what else is death? If you look at it like this, you may be highly educated, you may have a card full of degrees, you may have a coffer full of gold coins, but you can't bribe death. She'll still come. And what really helps there is if you know yourself, which is indestructible. So, all crisis is a way towards a greater liberation. And Sri Aurobindo uses a word in a line phrase in Savitri, digging a tunnel through emergency.
Yes.
So, it's a shortcut. It's a shortcut to heaven's gates. We'll see that. So, this is the whole night. And so Ashapati must descend there and know its secret, and only then he can give it to others. Otherwise, we have all the explanations. For instance, when people have not descended into the night, they will say, "Oh, crisis in your life is because of your past karmas, Papa. God is sitting up there and he's just punishing you." But when you have gone through it, many times you will say, this is grace. That famous aphorism, "But for the grace of God, here goes Sir Philip Sidney."
Yeah.
So when Philip Sidney says when he saw somebody going to the gallows, he says, "But for the grace of God, it could have been me. Sir Philip Sidney would have been going, but I have been
And
saved."
Sri Aurobindo turns it
And
he says, "By the grace of God, there go I."
there go I. Because then you realize that this is an opportune moment when I can cast from myself my surface soul and be the ungarbed entity within. So this is the background. And if we go into Savitri, we see it starts with night.
Yes.
So the very first canto where we see the mind of night, it's a very interesting phrase where Sri Aurobindo speaks of the mind of night in the very first canto on the very first page.
In her unlit temple of eternity.
Yes. It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone, in her unlit temple of eternity. Now it's very interesting that Sri Aurobindo, even in the dense night, he sees that it's a space for the temple of eternity. And various places, when darkness is scooped out of her being, it's like an emptiness. It's a space which was occupied by darkness. Now you have to fill it. So you should know what you have to fill it with. Otherwise, again, it rushes into the being. So you have to fill it with the light. So it's waiting for the light. So there is a very beautiful phrase, foreboding mind of night. So what is it waiting for? It's waiting for the light. It's an unlit temple of eternity. Someone will come and light a little lamp. So it's a very beautiful phrase from where creation begins. And the same sense will come much later when Sri Aurobindo would say, all our earth starts from the mud and ends in the sky. And then what happens when the flame is lit in the night? And this is the starting of the change. So we have plunged into the night so that night may be transformed. Sri Aurobindo says, if there is night, then all the more the children of light must plunge into it so that they can transform it. So this is how spiritual activism works. Nowadays there's a lot of talk about activism. So, political activism, social activism works on the surface without going to the root causes. But spiritual activism is when you take your own share of the night, but light a little lamp of light there and change it. And by changing it, you change everything else.
I'll read a little later after you go through some
Yeah.
about Mother's poetic, beautiful statement.
Okay, so we'll just read these 4 lines on page 50. Ever surround our brief existence here, grey shadows of unanswered questionings. We are surrounded by these grey shadows. There are no definite answers, there are no final answers at a mental level. The dark, inconscient, signless mysteries stand up unsolved behind fate's starting line. They are there. You see, even if you look at the law of karma, you're already as if somebody has fixed you. So behind fate's starting line. An aspiration in the night's profound, seed of a perishing body and half-lit mind, uplifts its lonely tongue of conscious fire towards an undying light forever lost. Only it hears, sole echo of its call, the dim reply in man's unknowing heart, and meets, not understanding why it came, or for what reason is the suffering here, God's sanction to the paradox of life. Paradox of life is that we all dream and aspire and seek for beauty, light, truth, peace, harmony, love. But we are compelled to gravitate and end up doing things which will create just the very opposite. So, why does God sanction this? What is this riddle of birth in time?
Our life is a paradox.
Our life
with
is a
God
paradox.
for key.
And again, this sense comes the same sense in Canto 5, page 75. Now, but here this sense comes when Ashupati has entered and he has seen and understood why there is this sanction. Because this is the biggest problem, that why the divine has sanctioned the night, the darkness. He could reread now and interpret new in strange symbol letters, scattered abstruse signs. Few lines below, and recognize as a just necessity its hard conditions for the mighty work. Nature's impossible Herculean toil. The dumb great mother in her cosmic trance, exploiting for creation's joy and pain. Infinity's sanction to the birth of form, accepts indomitably to execute the will to know in an inconscient world. So see the paradoxes. The will to know. This world is surrounded with unconsciousness. Everything we see all around us, including ourselves, our very life starts with unconsciousness. We don't know who we are. We don't know even how to eat and breathe, and yet things happen. But there is in us a will to know. So this is the paradox. Then there is another paradox. The will to live under a reign of death. All around is death. It's the only certain thing about life. That, whoever is born will die, as one of the ancient scriptures tells us. And yet, within us, there is a will to survive, to live, and even to immortalize. So there is this will. The thirst for rapture in a heart of flesh, which tires, which breaks down, which begins to weep and jump and cry under too much joy. And yet there is this thirst. And works out through the appearance of a soul by miraculous birth in plasm and gas, the mystery of God's covenant with the night. This is the riddle we have come to solve. This is the original issue, the real problem. And if we can find the answer to this paradox of life, we will solve the riddle of creation. But as long as we are simply doing things on the surface, we'll just move through one illusion to another illusion. But perhaps they are necessary at some stage in our life. But the real riddle is this, that, despite seeing death, despite seeing so much in life which can be tragic, if not in one's own life, all around, yet there is in us the will for joy and a hope that there can be joy. So this is something very amazing about human nature. Then Sri Aurobindo also promises that yes, of course, so shall it be. And this is very beautiful. We all know these lines, but what shall be one day? We have plunged into this night. Page 55. Thus will the mass transcendent mount his throne. So this, of course, we all know, everyday lesson of life. The night is darkest before the dawn. So a time, as long as we are holding on to various props, we are not really ready for the absolute. And Mother, I was reading the other day in Agenda, she says, all the rules, all the laws they have made. And when I tell them, no, there is no rule, there is no law, they think I have gone crazy. She says, they will give me another rule when I say this. No, Mother, it has to be like that. She says in the context of karma, it can be dissolved. You don't have to accept it. They tell her, no, Mother, our scripture says so. She says, but I am not here to follow the rules, I have come here to change them. There are indeed no rules. So, this going through the night, it lights up the aspiration. And then in that state, when we really are in a state of stark helplessness, that's when we learn that, well, none of these rules and laws can save us. What can save us is the eternal truth within, which is beyond all this. So we see this same sense when darkness is deepest and even the last lamp called reason goes away. Then what happens? In matter shall be lit the spirit's glow. In body and body kindle the sacred birth. Night shall awake to the anthem of the stars. The days become a happy pilgrim march. Our will a force of the eternal's power. And that's why we have to go through all this, so that the innate strength within us can come out. And hence we have to go through the utter compression of the darkness. See, it's so strange if you look at our scriptures. Before Krishna comes, Kansa comes. Before Rama comes, Ravana comes. Now what do? These guys prepare the earth, paradoxically. So they come, and because of them there is a tremendous aspiration in the earth. And everybody is waiting. And then when Krishna comes, they are ready for the game. And imagine if Krishna came in the beginning, before Kansa and before Rama came. Nobody would even listen. They would say, oh, you are crazy. Life is very nice, beautiful. So first the night and then the light. A few shall see what none yet understands. God shall grow up while the wise men talk and sleep. The wise men talk a lot on TV and the wiser men sleep, watching all the programs. So, for man shall not know the coming till its hour, and belief shall be not till the work is done. So he knows that man will not, trust it. Then how did this night come into being? It is the divine who has plunged into a state of self-oblivion. And that's described, I won't read it much. It's on page 107, where Sri Aurobindo describes the whole world stare and how step by step there is an involution till ultimately the plunge is into the utter night. And what happens then? Thus taken was God's plunge into the night. This fallen world became a nurse of souls. He went there. He went there because all these seedlings, the divine seed, were to come there. So the same one who is all knowing, omnipotent, omniscient, he becomes a teacher for the kindergarten nursery school so that all these souls can be trained. So he wears, how does he do that? He wears a very limited form. He wears the mask of night and he starts
He
taking
must
them
know God's darkness.
even as he knows his light. Yes. And then these two passages which I really wanted to read. This was the background. And this is a little bit advanced because sometimes, when people go to watch a film, they must know what's really going to come so that they can be happy about it, what they're going to watch. So we are reading Descent into Night. And Ashupati descends right into the pit, bottomless pit. It's called the bottomless pit because whatever you may pour into it, it can never be satisfied. So there is another place, the other day I was remembering line called libido's bottomless well. You pour any amount, you feel that, lust can be satisfied? No.
And it was Freud's great error.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So, of course, it is very powerful. He said that part.
Yes.
But he didn't realize it's the shadow of something which is true.
Yes.
And that we need to reclaim. But you pour any amount, it's a bottomless well. It will vanish as if there is no end to it. So Ashupati enters into that bottomless well, and what does he discover there? There also he discovers the wisdom. There, in this dark identity lost by mind, he felt the sealed sense of the insensible world and a mute wisdom in the unknowing night. It works, you see, even if you see all the unconscious creatures, seemingly unconscious or relatively unconscious, let's say in reference to man. But even there you see a wisdom. Even in atom, there is an urge for order. You see the atoms in a stone. They instinctively know, as if, the physicist would call it a law, that there should be 2 or 8 electrons in the outermost orbit to provide stability. Now, if the atoms didn't know it, there would be just chaos, if you want to put it. So even there, in the dumbest of material objects, atomic mass, there is the working of a wisdom. And as we see in the plant, and there are amazing examples of this wisdom. How plants, if you give them toxic chemicals, how they know how to survive. They can actually create new things, new chemicals to get rid of their toxic materials. They have tremendous capacity, like human beings.
Pushpa told us a story of mother going to Cuddalore to make new furniture for Sri Aurobindo's room. And they went to a go down, and mother went inside and chose the logs. They were all getting into the car, and mother's standing there. And they're saying, "Mother, come, we have to go." Mother walks back into the go down. Some minutes later, she comes out. "Mother, what happened?" Mother said, "There was a log in there, and it was asking me, please take me for Sri Aurobindo's furniture."
You know that when she went to the sugarcane factory, and she saw the sugar canes were being crushed, and abruptly, they are very alive and healthy, and as they go through the machine, they are being crushed. And where they are being crushed, suddenly there is a tremendous vital force which is being released. And it's all chaotic because, it's unharnessed. And she was concerned about it, that it can create accidents because it's an energy which has been released. It's also chaotic. So we don't realize sometimes as human beings that, everything is conscious. There are beds, by the way, here which have been made of the wood which has been seen by the mother, incidentally.
Yes.
So, there is even vegetables. They are so conscious. You can talk to them now. There are researches which say that you can talk to the plants, and they grow faster, they grow better. So there is a whole world waiting out there. There is a wisdom which is working even in the darkest of darkness. But it has been lost by the mind. That also we have seen. The mind has lost it. Well, mind has not only lost it, it has perverted everything. It has created artificial needs. So, if we need blocks of wood, we'll just cut and denude simply because we believe it's a need. It's an artificial need. So that's another story altogether. And then what does he discover? There, in the slumber of the cosmic will, he saw the secret key of nature's change. There lies the key. See, it's like the solution is where the problem is. So, in this game of hide and seek, the divine also dropped the key where we are going to face the problem on earth. It's not elsewhere, it's not in heaven, it's not in some other place. But we face the difficulty and the challenge here, and the key is here. So Ashupati discovers the key. And what does he discover then? A light was with him, an invisible hand was laid upon the error and the pain, till it became a quivering ecstasy. The shock of sweetness of an arm's embrace. Now, this Sri Aurobindo in one of his aphorisms says very interestingly that there is in fact no error. It's a very long commentary of the mother. These lines are very beautiful and I connect with them on many levels. The shock of sweetness of an arm's embrace. Now, I don't know, it's an experience which nobody should, or maybe everybody should go through. I don't know, depends on how you look at it. When you have nothing and no one, it's a wonderful time because you can truly invoke the divine. And then when you experience that closeness, it is so intimate, so sweet that you wish that you should always remain in that state. And you wonder how, you couldn't have experienced it if all the cords were not cut. And you had plunged into that state where there is nothing else except you with the darkness. Because then you can suddenly experience that he comes and holds us. Otherwise, even when he's there, we are so busy with this, that, everybody. So we have so many other hands to hold and support us. So the joy that Ashupati experiences when he felt the shock of sweetness of an arm's embrace. It reminds me of the story of Draupadi. It's a very fascinating story. Some people say it's not in the original Mahabharata. Doesn't matter. Original is not important. But the sense is very beautiful and Sri Aurobindo speaks about it. Look at how the poet has conjured that scene where Draupadi becomes so helpless before everyone. All the great men of that time, Drona and Bhishma and Karna, each one capable of decimating a whole army, and her own 5 husbands, and the great king. Nobody comes to help her while she is being disrobed. Then she calls Krishna. What joy she must have experienced. What ecstasy. I still remember watching that scene and I had just tears dropping out of my eyes because, of that scene where she keeps saying Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Now, the interesting part is, of course, Draupadi asks much later, why didn't you come straight away when I called you? Why did you take so much time for Dusashan to drag me and start disrobing me? So he said, very simple. When Dusashan came, you kept telling him that, you are so-and-so's daughter. When you were dragged into the court, you felt, Arjuna and Bhima will kill you. You people are crazy to do this. And then when they had lost the game, you trusted Bhishma and Dronacharya. And then when you started calling me, you were all lost. So you thought of me somewhere else, high up in Vaikuntha or some. It's when you were desperate that then you called, O thou who residest in my own heart. And I came. As simple as that. So it's a very beautiful story that how in that state of abject helplessness we are closest to the divine. It's very unfortunate that human beings call it tragedy. Whereas this is the real moment, you know, our God moment, as they say. And then what does he see? He saw in night the eternal's shadowy veil. So even in utter darkness is nothing but a veil. Sri Aurobindo says that in one of his aphorisms, that at first, when there would be an error, he would feel bad and, sense of shame. It's an aphorism he has written, exactly. And obviously, aphorisms are meant to give us a mental shock, to bring out a deeper truth. He says, but later on, I realized it's none else but Krishna. So when he would get up, he would say, my friend, you are at your tricks again. And then it left him forever. But as long as he was thinking that it's all these conceptions where you are important and you think play between virtue and vice, they don't go. But the day you discover it's none else but Krishna teasing you, the divine teasing you, then he has, he knows you have discovered him. So he can't play those tricks again. So he saw in night the eternal's shadowy veil, knew death for a cellar of the house of life. In destruction felt creation's hasty pace. Kali changes a whole yuga by her footsteps. Creation's hasty pace. Knew loss as the price of a celestial gain. If you want to get this much, lose this much. If you want to get more, lose more. If you want to get the all, lose all. Otherwise, there will be no space. So, renunciation is for a greater delight. That's why the Isha Upanishad says, Ten Tyakten Bunjita. And hell as a shortcut to heaven's gates. This is a lovely line. So, every time you see, that's why India is the shortcut to heaven. So, all the roads, bumpy roads, you go through them. Remember that this is a practice in equanimity. This is for endurance. This is a shortcut straight away leading. Actually, all the roads will lead you to some shrine of God or the other.
So say thank you.
Thank you. It is wonderful. Actually, I really feel now, this joke apart, I really feel India is a huge country which has been designed for yoga. And I mean, jokes about it to Russians who came and some other Russians, well, all the same. And they went across and they said, we didn't believe in grace, but now we believe after having gone through India. I said, how come? He said, what a traffic, what a chaos, everything. And yet, everything, people survive. They are happy at the end of the day. Nothing much happens. There has to be grace operating. Otherwise, actually, if you look at the traffic in real time from somewhere above, you'll be shocked. I have seen some of the images. Then you see, how many people, because there is nothing which is streamlined. Everybody is flowing and melting into each other, escaping by whiskers. And then you wonder, actually the accident rate is much less than what it could be.
And yet you feel it's impossible not to have 1,000 accidents a day.
Yeah. So, you can actually see grace. I've actually watched one such video taken from a CCTV footage of, actually on a road intersection. And you just wonder, oh my God, is this going to... And oh my God, and nothing happens. It's just by whiskers. So hell is a shortcut to heaven's gates. That's why you have to constantly take the name of God. Last passage, and then maybe, we can read that. There's too many places, but, we'll be anyways covering it. But this is something wonderful because this gives the quintessence of Sri Aurobindo's yoga. This is on page 600 and 601. A truth occult has made this mighty world. The eternal's wisdom and self-knowledge act in ignorant mind and in the body's steps. Everything from morning till night is a wonder. Your heart beats, your breathing, everything is going on. That's why when people say, I can't breathe, it just cannot happen. You just cannot choke yourself or stop your breath. It's just not built like that. So, what a mechanism. It continues despite so much. The inconscient is the superconscient sleep. An unintelligible intelligence invents creations, paradox profound. We have read some of these paradoxes, we have already spoken about it. Spiritual thought is crammed in matter's forms. If you study the book of life, you will know more about the Vedas than actually reading the Vedas. Everything is there. You look at a river, and that story of Satyakama. He is sent by his guru to go and rear the cows. And he goes and rears the cows. When 100 become 400. And when he comes back, he already has the Brahma Jnana. So he is asked, who taught you? He says, the fire taught me, the cow taught me, the well taught me. Dattatreya, famous, he had 24 masters. When he is asked, who were your masters? Among them, a harlot and a bee. So when the quest for knowledge is there, the whole creation teaches you. The flowers will teach us, the rivers will teach us, the mountains. So here, spiritual thought is crammed in matter's forms. Unseen, it throws out a dumb energy and works a miracle by a machine. All here is a mystery of contraries. Darkness, a magic of self-hidden light. Suffering, and that's why we are attracted to it, because there is a light hidden there. Suffering, some secret raptures, tragic mask. And that's why we are drawn sometimes towards the paradox, because there is a rapture waiting out there. And death, an instrument of perpetual life. Now look at these lines. Although death walks beside us on life's road, we were just talking about it. A dim bystander at the body's start, and a last judgment on man's futile works. Other is the riddle of its ambiguous face. So on the face of it, it's death, terrifying, destructor, destroyer. It finishes everything, swallows everything. Death is a stair, a door, a stumbling stride. The soul must take to cross from birth to birth. A grey defeat, pregnant with victory. Sometimes you see this, today itself, there was a video clipping which was about a car racer who died. I think he was from Bangalore, Ashwin, somebody. He was Formula One racer, and he was going in his BMW with his wife, dashed against lost control, dashed against a tree. The whole thing was in flames. Both of them died. So now first I said, why am I wanting ever to watch this video? Because it was a video clip. I said, what is it in me that is drawing towards this video? So that part was one part. But then, I went into reading his life. And he says in one of his interviews that I love to drive two-wheelers because there you can get much more thrill of speed. It's far more dangerous, and I enjoy that danger. It's almost like there was a life meant for this experience of extreme danger and going through it. And done with it. Well, the soul is immortal. It can take all kinds of stride. A whip to lash us towards our deathless state. The inconscient world is the spirit's self-made room. Eternal night, shadow of eternal day. There is no night. The sun never sets. The earth turns its face away from the sun. So whenever we don't feel the grace, it simply means we have turned this way. Not that the grace is not there. We have put the vase the other way round. Night is not our beginning, nor our end. She is the dark mother in whose womb we have hid, safe from too swift a waking to world pain. So we must first be in the womb. We must be ready even to open the eyes, to breathe. Otherwise, the seed must be buried inside the depth of mud, where only indirectly the sunlight reaches. Still it is ready for the light. We came to her from a supernal light to the dark mother. In the Vedas, it is Diti surrounded by Aditi, the divided consciousness surrounded by the undivided consciousness. And then the master line, by light we live, and to the light we go. So maybe we can read that.
I'll read two things. The first, from the Supreme Discovery. Mother, hear the story of the worlds. Look, the great enemy seems to triumph. He casts the beings of the light into the night, and the night is filled with stars. He rages against the cosmic working. He assails the integrity of the empire of the sphere, shatters its harmony, divides and subdivides it, scatters its dust to the four winds of infinity, and lo, the dust is changed into a golden seed, fertilizing the infinite and peopling it with worlds which now gravitate around their eternal center in the larger orbit of space, so that even division creates a richer and deeper unity, and by multiplying the surfaces of the material universe, enlarges the empire that it set out to destroy.
I'll just share with you.
Yes.
You know, when I was picking up this passage, last minute I had this thought, that Collected Works of Mother, Volume 2. You know, this wonderful passage, and I didn't have her collected works in my shelf. I said, oh, I wish I had remembered it, and I would have picked it up just for this passage. And there you are. So, it's so beautiful.
Beautiful indeed.
Yes.
Was the song of the primordial sphere, cradled in the bosom of immensity. But how much more beautiful and triumphant is the symphony of the constellations, the music of the spheres, the immense choir that fills the heavens with an eternal hymn of victory. Here again, no state was ever more precarious than that of man when he was separated on earth from his divine origin. Above him stretched the hostile borders of the usurper, and at his horizon's gates watched jailers armed with flaming swords. Then, since he could climb no more to the source of life, the source arose within him.
Wow.
Since he could no more receive the light from above, the light shone forth at the very center of his being. Since he could commune no more with the transcendent love, that love offered itself in a holocaust and chose each terrestrial being, each human self, as its dwelling place and sanctuary. That is how, in this despised and desolate but fruitful and blessed matter, each atom contains a divine thought. Each being carries within him the divine inhabitant. And if no being in all the universe is as frail as man, neither is any as divine as he. In truth, in humiliation lies the cradle of glory. 28th April 1912.
And the mother has titled this essay The Supreme Discovery.
The Supreme Discovery.
This is the discovery that we make and we should make.
I'll end with the last lines of Savitri. Numberless, the stars swam on their shadowy field, describing in the gloom the ways of light. Then, while they skirted yet the southward verge, lost in the halo of her musing brows, night, splendid with the moon dreaming in heaven, in silver peace, possessed her luminous reign. She brooded through her stillness on a thought, deep guarded by her mystic folds of light, and in her bosom nursed a greater dawn.